So my last video I got cut off, but I do want to make it clear. I'm so grateful for the stuff that I shouldn't even be grateful for. When I talk to people about how I'm grateful for things, and they go, "That's not normal. You have a very unusual family, and you should not be grateful at all," is what I'm being told. And that's because I try to look at things of like a forgiving, what would Jesus do type of way. And sometimes that's problematic because you really got to be strict. You got to hold people accountable. You got to stand up for yourself. I mean, I got my manager saying you need to really stand up to for yourself more in these situations. I get that a lot, and that is a problem, and it is the way I was raised. I'll give you an example. Um, when my mother was dying and I needed closure, she did awful things to me. She was dying in the hospital, and I really needed closure. My father ended up calling one of my only rides and the person that I normally get rides and stuff like this. And I don't know what they said, but my ride, Dan Beaudry, ended up telling me to call my father about it and that there was something going on. Your father called me, was his exact words. You need to talk to him. I can't give you a ride. And I tried to go myself, but it was just set up where it would be impossible. Everybody I called told me that they couldn't, or that my father stopped them and said they couldn't. And my father wouldn't bring me to see my dying mother to get closure for months and months. And then when she was allowed back home for one night with 20% of her liver working, she went right to the liquor cabinet and started drinking, and I had to deal with the most pathetic sight I ever saw. My mother dying, trying to drink booze, my father hiding in the kitchen, not wanting to deal with it, and me having to be the adult. And then I just couldn't bear to see this. And then the next morning, she was back in the emergency room needing a liver transplant and stuff. So I never got closure. I wasn't allowed closure. And that's because my father wouldn't allow me to see my dying mother. I'm 19, by the way. It's not like I'm some child. I'm an adult. I have my rights, and they're being infringed upon by my father. Not only is he messing with property and he's trying to treat me like a child, then he wants to treat me like an adult when it suits him. And no matter how much I try to stand up for myself, he just stomps me into the ground, treats me like a second citizen, or he just ends up like, for instance, I ended up taking illegal drugs that somebody else in the house had. They had a dead relative, Xanax. They had a dead, Xanax, Percocet. They had a bunch of illegal drugs that were to some nobody that was alive anymore. I'm not sure if they were selling them or taking them illegally. I don't know. But they were illegal drugs. So I decided to take them. That wasn't good. That wasn't a great decision. Those type of problems was going on in his house. Now, I'm considered a total adult, and I'm held liable for all my wrong actions for that situation. And then he steals all my property. He ends up taking my children's inheritance, which I put together. My father never gave me any of this. This came from the orphanage when I was a child, and I held on to for 20 years. It was so hard to hold on to, too. They were a collectible, they were still in the box, they never got ruined, and they were going to be worth some serious money by the time they were passed on to my children. Those were gone, and just about anything I ever owned, my father stole and then threw away as a justification because I stole their illegal drugs, and I took my mother's jewelry because she's now passed away, and I had property stolen by my father. So there was playing tit for tat back and forth with him. That wasn't right. But he doesn't think that he has to take any responsibility. See, I'm taking responsibility for the things and actions I did. I took things and I made choices. But my father, he doesn't want to have a discussion about his choices, and he doesn't want to try to make up for his choices. See, I had to make up for that. I had a total shit show, and I ended up having my life changed. He never made any amends or any reparations for any of his decisions in his life. He hasn't even called me and had a conversation about the things that he's done to me or the things that he let be done to me. And I'm sure I've done not the best things in the world, but I certainly haven't killed anybody. I certainly haven't done any damage to anybody's health, and I certainly didn't take no 40 years off his life. I certainly haven't made any difference in his life. He has never had to be homeless. He's never been coughed. He's never, at 7 years old, had to deal with an overdose. He's never had to deal with any of those type of things. He hasn't had his life changed. He hasn't had traumatic bad dreams because of Patricia or nightmares. He hasn't had to hear his own grandson, or I had to hear my own nephew tell me that he was afraid of my mother, that he's afraid of his grandmother, and I had to give him comfort for that fear of Pat. That's ridiculous. That I'm having the comfort Tim's son, my nephew, because of what's going on and what she's doing to me. And then when she's beating me with a ruler and doing crazy things, I have to come out of there into the kitchen, and he's scared shitless and tell him that it's okay. This happens all the time. It's okay. No, it's not okay. I shouldn't have to comfort him so he's not scared, because it is scary and it is wrong. And all these things happened, and did we ever even have a conversation about it? No. It was always my fault. It was always my fault. It's always my fault is his excuses. Victim blame, victim blame, victim blame, and then you don't have to deal with it. So wrong. So when I seem maybe ungrateful that I sent more than $2,000 back to him, like $2,400, all my tax returns I kept on sending as a repayment for surgery to get my teeth out, all my teeth out, because I kept on getting infections everywhere. And I might not seem too grateful for that one. I am actually extremely grateful, and I tell people how great my father is for giving me that loan. And then I leave out how I've been paying it back and all the history and all the things that were stolen from me. And I leave all that out. So I've had my closure stolen from me. I've had my son's inheritance stolen from me. I've had my inheritance stolen from me. I've had my health stolen from me. I've had parts of my Social Security stolen from me. I probably could keep on going, but it's not helping me any right now. Eventually, I'll probably, I don't know, he's getting older now. Maybe one day we'll have this conversation in a church in a polite, calm manner. I know he's not going to be calm, and I'm probably going to feel like my heart's going to explode. And if he actually owned this in a positive way and we can have a normal conversation, I'll probably burst into tears of happiness that he finally moved on. But that's not probably going to happen. Instead, he'll probably scream, have a hissy fit, and I'll just feel dead inside because of his just the way he's acting about it. And I'm willing to have discussions about how those meds affected me and how my behaviors weren't appropriate at times, and some of them were awful. But you first need to get to the beginning. You need to understand what's going to happen now. You need to understand what happened in the past, and to understand what was going on at age like 14, you got to understand what was going on at age 13. And to understand what was going on at age 13, you need to understand what was going on at 12. And if you're going to deny that there was even like any overdose at age 7 in Westford, if you're not going to go and talk about that, if you're not going to talk about the extra Epicac and extra drugs being put into my body and her talking about it, then that's a problem. And if you're not going to discuss at age like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 15 or something, I would have to talk to my sister and her husband and see if they remember when they were in the couch in the living room and my mother was in the kitchen and I was in between talking to her, and they asked what the problem was. And then I ended up talking about the Epicac. She admitted that she gave me extra Epicac. I asked if there was ever does anybody else see a problem here? Valerie ended up saying yes. My father said no. Those things need to be discussed further. And then I'll be happy to discuss the health issues I'm having now, why I use certain drugs. I mean, I've reflected on moments, and when you make a decision in the moment, there's reasons for it, as well as a lot of times I didn't get a choice. I didn't get to explain myself. I got shut down and stomped on before I even got a chance to speak. I didn't get a chance. If I had, like, for instance, when I had a bunch of cuts on my shins all the time, I wanted to have a conversation. I was just bumping into stuff, falling down. Normal kid stuff, I thought. But my mother kept on saying like my shins were cut open on purpose, and when my back of my foot got sliced open from the pool, I must have done it on purpose. We couldn't have a discussion about my coordination, even after the doctor said I had poor coordination because she wanted to put me in ballet. We couldn't go see a neurologist. We couldn't have a conversation about how fireworks were throwing me to the ground because my mother wanted ballet and tap dancing and all these other things. So I had to deal with being called girly, and I had to deal with that. I couldn't deal with the actual issue at hand, and nobody wanted to listen, and there was more and more drugs being pumped into my body every week.